That's the great thing about entrepreneurship. It is the school of hard knocks. You have to be committed, but you have control. You have to take responsibility.
Hey, this is Dennis Consorte at Snackable Solutions, and I am here with Casey Gray. How are you, Casey?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me, Dennis.
And we're going to get into your business. This is the Conscious Builder and the Conscious Builder Academy. Before we get into that, I'd love to learn a little bit more about you. Tell me your story. Who was Casey, let's say, post high school?
What happened in high school is that I realized I was really good at construction. That was kind of where my interest led. I went through high school thinking I was going to become an engineer, because I wanted to build stuff. But then I realized that that's not, being in a classroom wasn't really my thing. So I got into construction right out of high school, and I never looked back. And since then, I'm obviously not on the tool pouch anymore, or rarely, unless it's for our YouTube series or something that we're doing there. I did run a couple. We were so busy, I did have to run a couple projects last year. But it went into construction, eventually started my own business, leading to doing sustainable construction and healthy, comfortable, efficient homes, and eventually to all the stuff that we're doing online right now. So it's a really condensed version. And obviously there's all sorts of things that happen, good things, bad things, interesting things along the way. So not sure how much detail you want to go into.
You didn't follow the path that people like myself were told was the right path. When I grew up, I was told, you know what, you go to college, you get your degree, you're going to do great. And it turns out that what I do today has nothing to do with what I studied in school. You took a much different path.
I feel great about it, and the results are still in the making. And that's the great thing about entrepreneurship, right? Is that, it is the school of hard knocks. You have to be committed, but you have control. You have to take responsibility. That's what it comes down to. And I think I personally enjoy that responsibility. It feels good feeling like you're in control. In reality, we don't have control over anything, right? The only thing we do, there's one thing I should say, the only thing that we have control over is how we act or react in any given situation. Everything else we have zero control over. We might think we do, right? Or we might be able to influence decisions or people and so forth, but we have very little control. So as an entrepreneur, I felt good about that. And I saw my mom being an entrepreneur, and I always know I wanted to go that route. I was good at construction, but I wanted to run my own business, right? That I wanted to have that freedom to not necessarily, do what I want, but focus and build something that meant something to me, right? And that I can influence and inspire other people to be a part of, because I know that I can't do it alone. So that's been the exciting part. I think going to school would work for some people. I think that's becoming different as we see where the world is going. Yes, we need to continuously, I learn every single day, but I think the way that we used to learn is no longer relevant to the way the world is going. It's too slow. The world's moving way too fast.
I agree with you. And you're not just a builder, you're a conscious builder. What does that mean?
The word conscious really came into focus for my wife and I. Actually, we started something called the Conscious Living Podcast. That's where it all started. But the idea was to build all these brands around the word conscious, because consciousness is a state of awareness, correct? So the idea is that most of us are going through life unconsciously, right? We're making decisions unconsciously. We're just on kind of autopilot for the most part. And we're not really stopping, thinking, taking in whatever's happening, and then adjusting if we need be. So on the construction side, that's the approach that we take now. It's not a one size fits all, because what we do is custom, right? We're not building hundreds of houses every year. The idea is like we're doing custom stuff, whether it's a renovation or a custom home. And every decision is going to be different for the individual, because they're going to have different priorities, different needs, and ultimately have access to different amounts of money as well, right? So the idea is that we bring all of the information that we can get so that our clients can make a conscious decision. Now, obviously, we believe that focusing on health, comfort, and efficiency is smart for the long term, right? So we bring those types of things. So the people who come to us are looking for that type of work, because they want more than just the stone countertops or the pretty cabinets or the shiny tiles, whatever it may be. They want the stuff that you can feel when you're in a home, and that's the stuff that you can't see.
When you meet with these clients, And you talk about these things: health, comfort, efficiency, and other things. How do you drive the conversation so that you really understand what they're looking for and so that you can provide something that's going to bring them a tremendous amount of value?
Yeah, it all comes down to just asking questions, right? You continue to ask questions and figure out what their priorities are, and then ask them why, right? Why is that important to you? Because that's the biggest thing is the why. Is what, just because somebody says that they want to, I don't know, put solar panels on their house. Okay, great. Now why? Because the why is the reason that's going to get them to, if they think their solar panels are going to cost them $15,000 and I come in and say, no, it's actually going to cost you $30,000. They need to have a good why on why they're going to make that happen. Because what we all think we make logical decisions, right? But in reality, we make emotional decisions. If we made logical decisions, the luxury cars and mansions wouldn't exist because we don't need any of that stuff. But in reality, that's just fun, and we're human, and we want to experience this stuff, and why not, right? So when we understand their why, then we can drive them in the direction that we believe, not necessarily, once again, we're not telling them what to do, but give them information in the direction that we believe they want to go.
It's also important for a company to know their why so that they can move in the right direction. So you have these conversations with people and you get to their why. Do you close the deal in the first meeting, or is there some sort of funnel where you meet somebody for the first time, you have certain things that happen, and then you have other touch points? What does that look like in your world?
So my world, it's a little different. It's not necessarily a funnel for the construction side. Obviously, we can create a funnel for the Conscious Builder Academy side because it's a lot of online content. And but on the construction side, it's definitely different because we're not selling, $50 programs or $500 online course or whatever it may be. Some of these are $500,000 renovations, $1.5 million house, right? So there's going to have to be some conversation, and it's usually over, not necessarily a lot of conversations, but it's over an extended period of time because it's a big decision that people are going to make, right? They might reach out to me, today, but then maybe they don't connect with me again for another month, or I don't hear from them, so I reach out to them, right? So it really depends. A lot of times, though, when they're reaching out to us, a lot of people are committed to working with us, or I can figure that out pretty quickly because we do a lot of online content and we get a lot of referrals. So those deals I can close quicker. Very rarely am I pricing projects to get them. And we're not competing on price. The way we operate is an open book. We share all of our fees anyways. And the idea is to build this project with them. How much do they want to spend? What do they want to do? How can we fit as much as what they want to do into that amount of money that they want to spend, is what it comes down to, and accomplish as much of their goals, right? So there's very few contractors I think out there that can do that, or you can close a deal without actually putting a price together, but do it all the time.
Yeah, I feel like that's one of the pain points that a lot of small business owners have is we don't know how to price stuff. And I feel like often many of us underprice stuff. And you're talking about numbers, 500,000, $1 million. How do you know how to price your projects? Is it just formulaic or is it something else?
Well, every project's different, so we're going to have to price each one individually. But in terms of getting the contract signed, we know what our numbers need to be, right? So it's our hourly rates and whatever our markup is on the subtrades, contractors, and deliveries. And we've calculated that because we know what our margins are. We know what our value is too. And obviously, we need to do a certain amount of work because we base that on doing a certain amount of output, right? We're expecting to make a certain amount of revenue per month, and if we don't have the manpower, we can't do it. Then obviously we're not hitting it. But we've done all the work on the back end to figure it out, to make it that we're not necessarily the most expensive, but we're not necessarily the cheapest either. Our goal is to deliver good value, and the people who come to us are looking for that, right? That's why they're coming to us, is because a lot of the stuff that we deliver, it's long-term value, right? When you're putting money into the envelope of a home to make it more comfortable and efficient and healthy, that's not necessarily a payback like when you redo a kitchen and sell your house, right? This is something that you feel good about, and that your house it's going to save you in the long run because your energy bills are lower, and it's going to make you healthier because you don't have all the pollutants in your house, right? So it's a long game as opposed to the short game. We're not doing people aren't calling us to flip their house.
Yeah. And you said you're getting a lot of referrals. That means you're doing amazing work. What's your process for getting those referrals?
I have to give a lot of the credit to the team because I'm not on site, right? The team is ultimately delivering the service. And if there's big issues, and I get involved, but the team is delivering on the promise that ultimately I'm putting out there when we're starting to talk with people, right? And obviously I need to drive that boat and set that. But they're the ones who deliver it. So props go to them. Not so much to me on that front.
I do believe that leadership is important, though, and I know that this is something that's important to you as an individual. Can you talk a little bit about your leadership style and why your team is so good? How do you keep them motivated?
My style, I guess, is I'm definitely more. I'm not micromanaging, right? I'm not a manager. I don't appreciate it. I'm more of here's what we want to accomplish, go and do it. I don't care how you get there. This is what we need to get done. If you need help and support, I'm here. But I expect you to do the work. So that's kind of my style. Now I've learned over, after being in business over 12 years at this point, I have other people working with me on the management side that I meet with more regularly than with the entire team. And their goal is to obviously do that managing and making sure we're hitting the goals and we're tracking that stuff, right? Those aren't things that I'm doing. But when we start to lose momentum, it's the idea is you have to bring people back and remind them of what the vision is and what we're trying to accomplish and how people are happy and we're doing great work. But if they're not hitting their targets, like you said, how do you motivate them? We were having issues because people weren't filling out daily logs. But I'm never one to although competition is great and it's fun when you play sports, the idea is how do you get the team working together, right? So how do you get, instead of punishing somebody for not doing something, how do you reward the whole team if they all do it, right? So that's what we started to do recently, and it's actually working really well. So it's like, all right, we're going to have regularly, we'll surprise you with breakfast if you get all of your daily logs in, or we hit the, at least 90% daily logs. But if one person doesn't make it, then it's not going to work, right? We're not going to take you out. So now that person, comes down to accountability. So that person who was before just letting down management or me or whoever didn't care because they didn't see the importance of it. Now they're going to be letting down their entire team if they don't actually do this daily log, for example. Now all of a sudden everybody's doing it. So I think accountability is really important, especially as a leader. It's often, I don't have anybody to hold me accountable. If you're at the top, who's going to hold you accountable? You need to get somebody that will do that, or put somebody in place that will also hold you accountable, because that's where I think some of that so-called motivation comes in, is we'll do more for others than we will for ourselves at the end of the day.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I think that for many people at the quote unquote top, sometimes a coach is a good accountability buddy. Sometimes we need that. And yeah, just being able to hold yourself accountable is also important. When COVID hit and when we had these lockdowns, we're going on 2 years now. I feel like it had a tremendous impact, particularly on small business. And it had a lot of negative outcomes. It had some good outcomes. And one of the things that I believe is a good outcome is it accelerated the path that we were already on in terms of how businesses function. And one piece of this is we've moved towards more of a remote workforce. I feel like your industry is a little bit different. How did this all impact your business, and how did you pivot if necessary?
Yeah, it hit us on the construction side. The first 2 weeks, we shut down because nobody knew what was going on, right? So then everyone got scared. So clients, paused projects, canceled projects, or delayed them, right? Just said, let's start later. We're not going to do it yet, sort of thing. So obviously it hit us, everything slowed down. It hit us pretty good. Well, bad, however you want to look at it. We got hit pretty hard, let's put it that way, at the beginning. But then the bigger issue wasn't so much the fact that we didn't have work, it's that we didn't have the manpower to do the work. So what happened is that the government, I don't know where you are, you're kind of either way, the government started printing money, and then also all these people started getting money. So a lot of industries got hurt because they couldn't find manpower, because they're like, well, I'm getting paid to stay home, so why would I go to work, sort of thing, right? If I didn't even like my job to begin with. We didn't necessarily have that issues, but it got harder to find people, and the people who were willing to work were asking for more money, right? So, and there was fewer of those people, because all of a sudden construction exploded, because people started saying, hey, I gotta, at least in the residential world too, it's like, I have to work from home now, I need office, I need a bigger house, we're going crazy because we got 2 or 3 kids in there. So everything started to explode on that front. But then there was also supply shortages, right? And delays there, and they couldn't keep up, because it trickled into everything else. So we got hit more on the fact that we couldn't deliver. We had the work, but we couldn't do the work, because we didn't have materials or we didn't have the manpower. And now we're catching up. Once again, we have more work. Right now we need 5 guys on the construction side to do the work that we have coming up. So we're focusing on that. And I don't know when that's going to stop necessarily, but we're going to keep moving forward. So that would be how we got it. And we're continuing to feel that. And that's kind of, to some extent, always been in construction, right? There's always been a shortage of work. I feel like I've been in the industry almost 20 years at this point, and they've always been saying that, but it got worse at this point.
Yeah. And have you taken any steps that have helped you work through that? Like, is it just a question of paying more, or are you looking in different places for talent? What has helped your company figure out how to get that staffing?
So we just ultimately had to start actively going out to look for people, and reach out to people. So that was what my partner was doing. That's what my wife has been helping with too. It's actually going out there, connecting with people, finding the right people, and seeing if they're interested. We do put a lot of ads out there too for people to reach out. The good news is that a lot of the social media stuff that we do, a lot of the YouTube, there's actually like a lot of contractors watch our stuff. So if there's people that are watching us in our city, we've had people come on and work for us, but like, hey, we've been following you for 2 years, right? But now they get to come and work with us. So that helps too. So that stuff that we've been doing online for the last 4 or 5 years is actually coming back and helping us in more ways than we thought.
Well, that's great. And what about subcontractors? Like, are you able to reduce your backlog by farming stuff out to other companies, or that doesn't work so well?
Well, they're just as backlogged as we are too, right? So there's not. We're doing kind of more in house these days, because people are so busy, and we can't necessarily just rely. And obviously, we stick to carpentry work. We can't do electrical work or mechanical work or plumbing, for example. But luckily, we have long-term relationships with a lot of those trades as well. So we make sure they get in there. But things still happen, right? If you're just happened, for example, recently on a project, one of the electrician's daughters got COVID, so he had to shut down. So everything kind of became a domino effect. But we can't call in another electrician last minute because everyone's so booked, right? You just have to kind of roll with it at that point and navigate and figure out what you can do to change it.
Yeah. I want to go back to something that you said earlier, because I think it's important. Uh, you mentioned something about the government printing money and people staying home. I agree with that. What I also think is that that did more or less end after a period of time. And I think that during that time, and maybe I'm wrong, I think during that time, many people had time to realize that they weren't just in love with the work that they were doing. And they realized, you know what, I actually want more purpose out of the work that I do. I want it to mean something. Uh, do you agree with that? Or do you think it's more of the financial side of it?
I think it's a combination of, it could be a combination. Who knows, right? I think it's not just one. It's not like every person was the same, right? There, in any group of individual or any group of people, there's going to be different reasons for those people doing what they do, right? You can't just look at one group and if one person does it and say they're all like that, right? That's just naive to think that. So I think there's a combination, right? There could have been some people who just either couldn't get the work or didn't want the work. Who knows, right? Somebody who is maybe working at a minimum wage, maybe they weren't that motivated to begin with. Sure, they didn't like the job, but if they now don't have to work to get paid, why are they going to go out and get work, right? If somebody was doing a job and then lost it, that could, and they enjoyed working, maybe that could be somebody who's like, you know what, maybe this is my opportunity to shift gears, to change industries, whatever it may be, right? So I think there's different reasons for, I think it's probably a combination, right? It's not just going to be one or the other.
So we'll go ahead and jump straight into the Snackable Solution. Why don't you go ahead and tell everybody what that is, Casey, and the steps they need to take?
There are 5 things that I wish I knew when I started my business. So basically, these are all mistakes that cost me a lot of time and cost me a lot of money. There's way more than 5 mistakes that I've made in my business, but these would be the top 5 that I think are most important. The number one is a financial thing. Is when I started my business, I didn't understand the difference between markup and margin, and that literally cost me thousands of dollars. And if you don't know the difference, you definitely need to learn. I can't explain everything here. I do have a course, a more detailed, like free course that you can get actually at the consciousbuilderacademy.com. And I go into more detail on these things. But essentially the markup is adding on to what your cost of your product is. Say it's $100 and you're going to add 20% to it. That's the markup. The margin is based on going backwards. So the margin would be how much did you make based on the revenue. So the total sale price, that 120. So in that markup, to do a quick, you can do the math yourself. If you were to mark it up 20% from 100, up 20%, that gives you 120. But if you were to work backwards to figure out your profit margin, that would be 120 divided by that 100, which would actually be 16.7%. So if you're looking to make 20% profit margin, on some businesses should be a lot more than that. It depends. I'm in construction industry, so it's a different, we're looking overall for a lot more, but this is just talking about like sub trades. I was leaving 3.3%. So if you're doing $1 million in revenue, which isn't a lot for a construction company or as a general contractor, like that was $50,000 a year of money leaving on the table. So that was number one. Number 2 was understanding the importance of environment and how it's way more powerful than willpower. And what I mean by that is that willpower will only get you so far. If you want to go to the gym, you might be motivated and you go to the gym, but you might lose momentum, right? You know, you're tired, it's cold out, or you don't want to get out of bed, whatever it may be. But if you're surrounded by people who are pulling you and holding you accountable, going back to what I was talking about before with accountability, that is the environment that will make you better. So if you want to be a successful business person, surround yourself with successful business people. If you want to be a great husband, a great wife, surround yourself with other couples who have successful relationships. If you want to be healthy, surround yourself with other healthy people. And if you don't believe this, like the power of the environment, just look at the top 5 people that you hang around with the most, and you are the average of those top 5 people in everything, right? It could be the amount of money you make, what you eat, what your habits are. Habits are really important too, because we are basically our habits. So once again, I can kind of go on in this stuff for a long time, but be very conscious of environment. And one thing to add to that is not just the people, it's what you listen to and what you watch. Be very careful about what you allow into your mind. And that's one of the reasons why I don't watch a lot of media unless I'm specifically looking for something, because it's not going to help me in any way. Number 3 would be understanding the difference between urgent and important. And what do I mean by that? That means that not everything that's urgent is necessarily important. So in business, there are things that are really important, but there's always so-called urgent things that come up. So my business of construction, it's important to work on the business, right? It's important to put together a financial plan, a marketing plan, work on videos, the courses that we're doing for the conscious builder. Those are all important things, but none of them are urgent. The urgent thing might be like a client calls because they're upset because the paint color is wrong. But I have to, as a successful business person, need to make sure I put time aside to work on the important things and not worry too much about the urgent things, because those can wait, right? And now there are things that are urgent and important, but I know as building houses, we're not saving lives, right? If somebody called me and the roof was leaking and the guys just left or something like that, that would be, urgent and important. We'll take care of that. We'll get the guys back there. But rarely does that happen. And be aware of that and understand the difference between the two, because that saved me a lot of time. Even now, it gets more and more difficult because as a business person, as you become more and more successful, you have a more and more demand on your time. People want to spend more time with you, so be very careful of that. And the other thing was kind of what we were talking about before, was the aligning values. So number 4 would be making sure that you're clear on your values and the people who work for you are aligned. And the reason why I say that is because I had people that were working for me when I started my company, and I ended up having a lot of internal problems. They're all great people, but our values weren't aligned, or their values weren't aligned. So there was internal conflict, and it was, you already deal with enough problems as a business owner and stuff that you have to deal with. The idea is like you're solving problems. That's why businesses exist. And when you have to deal with other internal problems, that's just, once again, wasted time. We need to be very efficient with our time because so many people are pulling at it. But if you get clear on what your values are as a business, and then you are clear with, and people are clear with that, put it on your website. Ours are fun, honor, and mastery. People are very aware of what our values are. Those are basically my values that I'm instilling in the business. Make sure that people are aligned. It doesn't mean that they have to have the same beliefs, because there's a big difference between values and beliefs, but it is important to have the values aligned. Like, you can both value health, for example, but have very different beliefs on how to achieve that ultimate health, right? So be very conscious of those two different things. Beliefs cause wars, so be careful of that. And the last thing, number 5, would be how to say no. This is important. Once again, going back to your time and people demanding more and more of your time, you need to be aware of what you're saying yes to. Yes, it's easy to say yes, and you want to say yes, and you want to grow and grow and grow, but be aware that every time you say yes to something, you're saying no to something else. If you say yes to taking that late call with a client, you're saying no to spending time with your family. That's essentially what you're doing. If you're saying yes to the smaller projects, or a few small projects, maybe you're saying no to that big project that's coming down the line because you don't have the manpower, you don't have the ability to do that now. So be very aware, and don't be afraid to say no. People will respect that. I say no to projects all the time if the values of the project don't align, right? If it's not something that we're interested in, sorry, we're not interested in doing it. And then all of a sudden something else comes up, right? It's funny how the universe works. You just have to trust, and you need to go with what you believe is right, and magic will happen.
All right. Casey Gray, how do people find you online?
We're all over. You can just search The Conscious Builder. So we do have a lot going on our YouTube channel. Definitely check us out there. If you are a contractor, I recommend going to consciousbuilderacademy.com. We have some free courses there, as well as some great paid packages that we just released this week, actually. So lots of stuff going on there. And we have lots of big plans for for programs coming out this year. We got 2 in the works right now.
Awesome. All right, Casey, it was a pleasure to chat with you today, and thank you for sharing all that great advice.
Thanks for having me, Dennis. Really appreciate it.